Hello options traders, I wanted to post a follow-on video to one that I just published recently called Thinkorswim Heat Maps. And in this video we're going to talk about the Index Watch, which is a related feature in the Thinkorswim platform. Both the heat maps and the Index Watch give you a really simple way of getting a bird's eye view of what's happening in the market, which stocks are up, which are down, and by how much. They go about it a little differently, so that's why I've separated them into two different videos. I will include a link in the description below for the heat maps, but for now, let's jump over to the Thinkorswim platform and take a look at the Index Watch. When you're inside the Thinkorswim platform, you're going to get to the Index Watch in exactly the same way you will for the heat maps. You're going to click on this tab up here that says Market Watch, and down below you're going to see a set of what Thinkorswim calls subtabs. These right here, and you want to make sure you choose Visualize. From the Visualize subtab, you can choose from this drop-down menu. We have Heat Map and we have Index Watch. You just want to click on Index Watch right there. And this is what it's going to look like. You're going to get a series of up and down green and red bars and several lists down here. These are just little ways of cross-referencing the companies. Now, to make it easier, I'm going to start with a smaller index. So let's go to the Dow. But we can look at lots of different ones in Thinkorswim. So for instance, let's come up to here. I can look at personal index watch lists that I've created. I can look at various public ones. I can choose all ETFs, cash settled futures, lots of different things we can sort by. But let's go to this one right here in the center, Dow Jones Industrial Average. And what you're going to see is a graph. Now this is going to be a simple one because we've only got 30 stocks in the Dow. But first, up here at the top, you'll also see this little box where we have advancing and declining issues. Advancing issues are just what it sounds like, those that are having a positive day. Their current price is greater than the previous day's closing. So of the 30 stocks in the Dow, this is from Friday's close, we had 26 that advanced, and we had 4 that declined, for a total of 30. Here are the corresponding volumes for the advancers and for the decliners. This column right here, capital, Thinkorswim doesn't make it real clear what this is. I have a feeling it's the total market cap increase or decrease. So for example, if we have, let's say we've got stocks 1 through 30 in the Dow. I look at the first advancing stock, maybe it's up 30 cents. I take that 30-cent increase times the number of shares outstanding for that company. Then I look at stock number 2, maybe it's up 75 cents, times the number of shares outstanding for that company. And I do this for all of the advancing stocks and I add it up. I'm going to get about almost $241 million of increasing capitalization. For the decliners, we had about $147, almost $148 million lost. So we had a net increase in capitalization on Friday. Over to the right, we have the put-call ratio, which many of you know is a type of technical indicator that a lot of options traders use, widely watched, and it's just basically the number of puts traded against the total number of calls. I'll do a separate video on that in the future, but a lot of times people are trying to figure out, hey, where can I find the put-call ratio? Very easy to do in TOS. But the main reason for going to the Index Watch list is for this graph down below. And what you're going to see is a series of green bars and red bars. The green bars are showing the companies that are up, and the reds are the ones that are down. So if you're trying to figure out which of the Dow components is having the biggest day, just hover over the highest green bar. So right there, this would be at the close, was right there at the top you can see is Dow Chemical. Let's zoom in here to this bar. The very top of the solid bar is where it is currently. So if this was a live market, you would see this bar rise and fall with changes in the stock's price. But on the closing bell, if you look to the left, it was just over 3.5% up. This little hash mark up here is the high trade of the day. So you can see at one time throughout the day, it was actually quite a bit higher than where it was on the close. Who had the biggest down day? Just look for the biggest red bar. Right here, hover over it, J&J, Johnson & Johnson. And if we look to the left, looks like it was down maybe 4.5% or so. But at one time was down much more, maybe 6.5%. So again, it's just very easy to quickly look through the graph and see who's having the biggest gains or the biggest losses, and to find out which company it is. Now we can also get more detailed information. So for instance, let's go back to this big green bar, which was Dow. Let's say that you didn't know what this company was. Well, look over here to the right, and it's going to give you a nice little breakdown with the last net change, going to show you it's exactly up 4.04% at that time. Shows you the bid, the offer, high, low, and the volume. Down below the graph here, you're going to see a little table, and this just gives you a different way of referencing the different stocks here. So let's say that rather than trying to find out which stock is maybe having the biggest gain or loss, you're trying to find a stock that maybe you have in your portfolio. And you know it's, let's say, JP Morgan, ticker JPM. Well, rather than having to scan through and find the ticker, these are in alphabetical order down here. Just go over here, find JPM. And when I point to it here, you can see that it now identifies the corresponding bar up top. So if you're looking for a particular ticker, you'll want to look at the tables down here. If you're just trying to find out who's having the biggest up day or down day, you'll want to look at the graph. So once you know how to read the graph, it's very simple. Let's go back up here and take a look at maybe the S&P 500. So I'm going to come down here to public. These are in alphabetical order, so we're looking at R through W. So right there is the S&P 500. Choose that. Now, of course, because we have more stocks than in the Dow, we've actually got 505 different tickers right now in the S&P 500. And in fact, you can even see that up here from the optionable. There's actually 505, but only 498 are optionable. So I think it's L3 Harris, HRS maybe, and Comcast CMCSK, I believe, are the two that are not optionable. So of the 500 individual tickers, 498 are optionable, which means that they have options traded on them. But you'll see in the graph here, same idea, just a much bigger look. Of course, because there's so much information here, Thinkorswim has to break these down into pages, which you can see over here. It's telling you page 1 of 3. So page 1 is just this section right here. Then if we scroll down here, it's telling us this is page 2 of 3, which is this section right here. And then finally down below, we have our final stocks rounding out the remaining 500, which is down here. So again, very simple to figure out. Just let your eye scan through who's having some big days. Well, it looks like this one right here, that was Capri Holdings. And down here on the right, I can see was up 3.9%. Now, it's also important to remember that in any of these blocks, so when I'm saying this block on page 1, just these right here, just because you see a bar that might be big here, doesn't mean that one down below, let's say this one, isn't necessarily having a bigger day, because it depends on the range. So for instance, take a look back up here on page 1. If you look at the scale, it's ranging from -6% to +6%. But down here, you can see the scale ranges from -20% to +20. Why is that? Well, it just so happened that one of the stocks on this page had a really big day, whether up or down, and it changes the scale. So you can see the one right there is Illumina, which was the same stock we saw on the heat maps. Down over here, you can see it was $305, down 58 bucks, or about 16%. So because this scale is so changed, you know, this bar right here might not seem like it's all that big, at least compared to some of the ones up here. But remember, our scale is much wider here. This stock right here was actually up almost 6%. So the point is, don't just take a look at a given bar, like up here on top, and assume that that's, you know, the bar to beat. You have to always consider the scale over here. So always let your eye go over here and take a look at what this scale is. But it's really easy to just come down, look at these page by page, and find out which tickers are having the biggest days. So down here, I would say it looks like United Rentals was up about 4%. Who else? Maybe this one over here. PH, Parker Hannifin, up about 3.5%. So the point that I tried to make also in the heat maps is that it's a easy way to figure out which stocks. Now think about this. We're looking at basically 500 different ticker symbols. And in a matter of a few seconds, you can quickly figure out which stocks are performing the best and the worst just by looking at your index watch list. So if you remember, the big difference with the heat maps is that we could get a gauge of which companies were performing the best by which ones had the brightest green and which ones were the worst by the ones that had the brightest red. But we weren't able to see the numbers. So if you're actually trying to see the percents up and down, you'll want to use the index watch list. So if you have Thinkorswim, I would encourage you to come through here and just play around and poke around in these different menus and see different things that you can sort by. It's really an amazing feature. But I can do, for instance, here's an interesting one called Lovers and Losers. This is what Thinkorswim calls as a classification, just analyst downgrades, upgrades, post-market movers, who moved after the bell, who's moving before the bell. So on any given day, which were all the stocks that got downgraded and which ones are performing the worst? Which ones got upgraded? Which ones are performing the best? We can easily find that. Again, I can look at every single index out there. If I want to look at maybe just the ETFs, here are all the various ETFs. I can go back up to this menu. Let's look at by industry. Maybe I want to find healthcare. I can look at specific industries within healthcare or select all healthcare. There's all of your healthcare stocks. It's very easy to find out what's happening in the market in a matter of seconds when you're using your heat maps and your index watch list. If you'd like to learn more about the art and science of options trading, please check out the Alpha Trader course and Strategy Lab, as well as Thinkorswim training, and you can find it all at OptionsAtoZ.com. Also, please join us on the Facebook trading group Options A to Z, and you can find a link in the description below.